All right, everyone, it is 7:30. It's 7:30. Welcome to our November City Council meeting. It's time to call that meeting to order. We are going to start with the... Miss Fay, we're getting started here. It's all right. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Mr. Perkle is going to do the blessing of the meeting for us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you pray with me? Lord, thank you for the opportunity you've given for us to be here tonight to take up the city's business. We ask your blessings on those who came out to participate and for those who were not able to make it. We ask you give us wisdom that we make the right decisions to help move this city forward. We want to thank you for the season we're moving into, season of thankfulness for all you've done for us. Help us to bless those around us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Perkle. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Have a motion from Mr. Hicks. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Anderson. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, next is the approval of the minutes for the City Council meeting in executive session on October the 14th and the work session on October the 7th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes, Mayor.
I have a motion from Mr. Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Page. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Good deal. We have no awards, presentations, or proclamations, so we'll move on to reports. And first up is our city attorney, Mr. Hartley.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report.
Thank you. Next up is the city council, and I'm going to start with Mr. Page first today.
Thank you, Mayor. At the end of October, our members of our community came together to celebrate Diwali, the Festival of Lights, the significant cultural holiday is observed by many of our residents and serves as a time to celebrate the triumph over light over darkness, knowledge over ignorance, and good over evil. My hope is that it was a wonderful Diwali for all that celebrated this year. Yesterday, we were thrilled to celebrate Veterans Day, a day dedicated to honoring our men and women who have served our country in the armed forces. Our city takes great pride in recognizing sacrifices of our veterans, and yesterday's ceremonies were a testament to our community's gratitude. I extend my heartfelt thanks to all the veterans and their families and their dedication, bravery, and service. We are eternally grateful for the freedom that they have preserved for us day in and day out. As we continue throughout the fall and those leaves keep falling, I want to remind everyone of course, our city's yard waste collection service. Please place your limbs and yard clippings out in the right-of-way, and the Public Works team will be happy to come by and pick those up. And if you need free mulch, feel free to give the City Hall a call, and they can arrange you to get some mulch out there and hopefully freshen up your yards before the winter sets in. Lastly, of course, as we approach Thanksgiving, I do want to let us take a time to reflect on the many blessings that we enjoy as a community and as a nation. Thanksgiving reminds us as a time to come together in gratitude, support those who are in need, and cherish, of course, the moments that we share with all the loved ones and our friends around us. After you eat your leftover turkey on that Friday, I hope you join us here in Sugar Hill for our favorite holiday tradition. John Barry is performing once again at the Eagle Theater on November 29th for his 28th annual Christmas tour. So it'll be another great show. With that, Mayor, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Ms. Avery, you're up next.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have a report for November, but I certainly would echo everything that Councilmember Page said so eloquently. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Avery. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. For the Riverlands this month, we have our open house tomorrow at the East Center in the Waterfall Room from 5:30 to 7:30, where we will be presenting the draft of the master plan. There'll be opportunities to hear from Riverlands Authority members, take a survey, view the master plan, give your feedback. So hopefully you'll be able to come out and participate in that open house. And I want to give a special thanks to Claire Weatherly in our planning department, who has worked so hard on this as we are about to wrap this effort up. And she's done a great job of communicating with the authority and with our consultant and putting together all the information that we'll see tomorrow night. So Claire, appreciate you. Thank you for doing that. And finally, I had the opportunity to attend a Christmas Story on Friday with some friends and neighbors. And if you haven't been, and if the Christmas Story, even if it's not part of your family tradition like it is, that movie is a part of my family tradition, you should stop by the Eagle Theater. Tickets have been going fast. I heard Sundays was a near sellout show. So there is one more weekend of A Christmas Story at the Eagle Theater. You should stop by and see it. It is a great time. It's a great way to get into the Christmas spirit early, even though it's a little bit before Thanksgiving, but it's a great way to get into the Christmas spirit early, and it's never too early to get into the Christmas spirit. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Hicks.
Thanks, Mayor. I first want to applaud the amazing season and concluding the past concert from the events team. Such an amazing job of coordinating, facilitating, and orchestrating those all of those events. So way to go, Avery and team. As Councilman Page has mentioned, the Veterans Day was yesterday, so I give thanks to all the veterans and those that have gave for our freedom. So we really appreciate that. We had the Veterans Day ceremony, which was an amazing event. It's something that I think that our city does really well, partner with the Daughters of the American Revolution. So that's such an amazing event that was held yesterday. We had the opportunity to attend the North Gwinnett Co-op Harvest of Hope fundraiser that was hosted last month. That was an amazing event as well. That actually is an opportunity for those to be able to have an opportunity to understand what the co-op provides to our community as far as the need, the big need that is actually within right here in our backyards. And so through that event, the co-op was actually able to raise that night alone over $240,000 that would be utilized for the upcoming holiday this upcoming season. And speaking of the co-op, there is some opportunities to be able to volunteer at the co-op. They are in need for some holiday help. Actually, on Saturday, November the 23rd, they are doing their Thanksgiving meal boxes, and they need some help from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So, and also on Saturday, December 14th, the Santa Shop need helpers on the second shift, which is from 1 to 4:30. As well as Saturday, December 21st, that's the Christmas meal boxes, and the times needed for that is 11 to 1 p.m. So volunteers is always needed at the co-op, and you can reach out to Mary Warren, who is a facilitator for all of the volunteer events. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Perkle.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report at this time.
All right, thank you. I'll go next. I just have a quick reminder for everybody. The Lanier Longhorns, the football team, they're in the playoffs, and they're actually playing the Sprayberry Yellow Jackets Friday night, 7:30 p.m. at Sprayberry High School in Marietta. It's a long drive, but they've had a great year, and I think this is a winnable game for them. Mr. Hicks and I are going to go out there with some band parents and football parents, and want to try to show as much support as we can for the Longhorns. And so if you have a free Friday evening and want to take the time to go out to Marietta, I know they would love to see you in the visitor stands, and I'm hoping we can fill out those stands. And that's all that I've got. Next is our city clerk, Ms. Whittington.
Thank you, Mayor. The city business office approved 11 new business licenses in the month of October. The renewals for the business licenses will be going out this month. They are due by January 31st of 2025. The alcohol renewals for retail consumption licenses within the city are due by December 31st of 2024. Those are already gone out, and they're in the process of renewing them now. The city also issued 171 passports in the month of October. And if you need a passport or need any business license information, visit the city's website or call the main number, and they will set you up with a passport appointment or send the forms or make the forms available for any of your renewals. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Whittington. Next up is our city manager, and I'll recognize him for his report.
Thank you, Mayor. Should be in the back of the room is the November month in review, but just let me go over a few of the highlights of the report. First, I want to start with our Parks and Recreation Department. Everything's in transition now with sports at the various facilities, and obviously the transformation of our downtown from our Halloween decorations to our holiday decorations that continue to be put up, more being put up tonight. But just so you know, under recreation, they manage, they're responsible for our Greenway, East Center, the water features at the Veterans Memorial, the golf club, all of our parks, the ice rink, relationship with our private vendor, all of our water features, and our downtown maintenance. They are a huge and valuable resource for both residents and certainly for the city. Speaking of the East Center, it has now 22,141 members who enjoy, I think, access to great equipment, great facilities, and great classes that are provided by our contractors. And as you see in the report, various academies and leagues are well into their fall athletic sessions. We'll have some special time opening that will be closed on Thanksgiving Day, November 28th, but we'll reopen the next day. And also, as it was reported by Councilmember Page, that John Berry plays on Friday the 29th. Disc golf at Ridge Lake Park has been successfully activated. In fact, it attracted both professional and amateur players, and they hosted a tournament recently with 26 participants. Given the change in time, our golf club will close on Mondays starting in November and will resume following the daylight savings time change in March. So that's for your information, those who play golf. I've got a set of golf clubs in my office that you can use. I have them on display. They've been there for a year. They haven't been used.
I use them more often than the city manager uses his own.
If you want to play, check out some nice golf clubs. Just, if they're in my office, take them. Our gas department is quickly installing automatic meter readers. We installed 33 this last month, bringing the total number of AMR accounts to 11,639. And these are read through a radio-based system. Speaking of yard debris and clippings, we had 142 truckloads of bagged clippings this past month, and 15 loads went to the disposal site because we can't dispose of or shred plastic bags. Only paper bags are biodegradable. Our public safety, they had 1,400 patrols in all residential areas, business parks, and city assets, as well as our downtown, both during the daytime and at nighttime. And just remember, we are starting to enforce downtown parking regulations and for parking, and we don't want you to get a violation. So no long-term parking, no overnight parking. Just be aware of what our policy states. In October, 8 residential building permits were issued in the planning department in Skyview, Haven Overlook, Ellison Square, and then the residence that's on Level Creek Road. There's been a remodeling permit issued for Kroger and a construction office on Nelson Brogdon Boulevard, and Starbucks that is in the Solos project right outside the window over here. And as we said at the work session, we've welcomed him, and we're now giving him learning under fire for Art Newell, our new planning and development director. He has immersed himself in everything. He's got great background in both in planning and zoning for both public sector and private sector. We're blessed that he's here. Former planning director for the city of Rome, former zoning administrator for Carroll County. It's, as I said, in between he did some private work, so we're just blessed to have him here in the city of Sugar Hill. And you mentioned, and Councilmember Anderson mentioned about the open house for the Riverlands master plan. Here's a statistic that really jumped out at me when Victoria, who does this monthly report for us, under downtown happenings, the downtown campus welcomed over 71,000 visitors in October alone. Our dynamic downtown is a central hub for community engagement and entertainment, and it is activated every day and every night. And if you got here a little bit late and you're looking for a parking space, that's because there's a lot of people downtown tonight. The ice rink is started, and it'll have another successful season. And I appreciate again Andy coordinating this for the city, the installation of all of our downtown decorations that will be here through just beyond January 1st. Now I'd like to turn it over to Troy to give just a brief construction update as well as an operations update.
Thank you, Mr. Radford. I will be brief. The management report does contain a number of project updates that you may want to read through. We have made some pre-construction progress on a number of projects that are outlined in the report. We also have a monthly public project update on our website, so you'll want to check that out. The two projects I wanted to highlight are stormwater related. One is at Gary Perkle Park. There's a stream bank stabilization project that is probably 3/4 of the way through its construction schedule. And that one has reached the point where the hardened portion of the stream bank itself has been completed. There are some live stakes and plantings that are going to be installed and planted in the upper half of the stream bank. Those will be next in the process, but most of the more significant portion of construction has been completed. And then we did have a stormwater project on Creek Bluff that is, again, about 3/4 of the way through its construction schedule as well. And that one is progressing well, and the contractor should be complete in the next 10 days there.
For that, Mayor, this concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up is our Youth Council. Welcome.
Good evening. Hope you guys are doing well. In short, the Youth Council just had a great bonding event, and we're super excited to show up for the Riverlands Authority open house tomorrow and the great year. Thank you.
Thank you for the quick report. Next, we'll move on to citizens and guest comments, and this is an opportunity for anyone to speak on something that's on their mind about Sugar Hill. Each person has up to 3 minutes. Is there anybody who'd like to take advantage of this time? Right, I see nobody, so we will move on. Yes, sir, absolutely.
Thank you.
And please give your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Rahim Rahmanzeh. I'm at 5103 West Broad Street. The reason I'm here is because I live on that roundabout right between Holbrook and Skyview. And I think Saturday evening or Sunday morning, third time this year, I've had my mailbox hit by someone that is taking that roundabout way too quick. I've heard that the roundabouts were going to be addressed. There's going to be some updates or something in that nature. I'm going through a mailbox every 4 months because it hasn't been addressed. So just wanted to put it out there that if we could get a speed bump or something to limit the speed that people take that roundabout at, because if someone's wearing like a black sweater or something and they're on that sidewalk and people do to my mailbox, you know, or do to them what they do to my mailbox, it could be a bigger issue for the city of Sugar Hill. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there and would appreciate if we could address it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that would like to take advantage of this time? All right, we will close it out and move on. We have no consent agenda, no old business, so we'll move on to new business, and I'll hand over the first item to Ms. Whittington, our city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council approved ordinance RZ 24004 at the October 14, 2024 meeting. The ordinance was approved with 10 conditions attached to it. Mayor Hembree subsequently vetoed the ordinance, and it is back on the agenda tonight for council consideration. They will need to vote on the ordinance either at this meeting or the December 9th council meeting. And what the council is voting on in their consideration is whether to approve this ordinance as it was approved and submitted at the October 14th meeting. If they do not approve the ordinance by a vote of 4 of its members, then further action will need to be taken. The veto will stand and further action will need to be taken by the council at a separate meeting. So that is what the consideration is tonight. If you have any questions, the city attorney or myself can address those questions.
And y'all are welcome to ask questions, and if you don't, then I'll just ask if there's any action that y'all would like to take tonight. All right, if there's no questions, is there any action that y'all would like to take tonight?
Frank, do we need to take a vote actually on the veto itself?
You don't take a vote on the veto itself. If you're going to take any action, you will take action to vote on the ordinance that was approved at your November meeting. If nobody makes any motions tonight, under the charter, the veto consideration, which is the ordinance consideration, will move on to your December meeting, because under your charter, you can either take action on the ordinance at the meeting at which it's presented, which is tonight, or at the December meeting. So if nobody makes any motions tonight, then it'll be placed back on your December agenda for consideration again in December. And then you can either take action in December, or if no action in December is taken, then the mayor's veto would stand. And so the rezoning item would be live for action to be taken by the council at that time. Does that make sense?
I think so. So I'm going to make a motion to table RZ 24004 to the December 9 City Council.
All right, there's a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a second. All those in favor of tabling, please raise your right hand.
It's unanimous, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. So that allows us to move on to the next item on the agenda tonight, correct? Good deal. All right, we'll next move on to item number 2. This is the public hearing on our 2025 proposed budget, and we had our first hearing this past Monday night, and I'll recognize the city manager to present the budget. And Mr. Radford, I know you gave an extensive presentation last Monday, but if you could go through it again and maybe talk about the changes that have been made between now and then based on input from City Council.
Thank you, Mayor. But for just as some background, which I think is important to show what state law requires, is that it requires that this council adopt a balanced operating budget as well as adopt a 5-year capital improvement program and the current year capital improvement budget. We are required to identify the sources of funds anticipated to finance your capital improvement program. We published the required notice of availability of the proposed 2025 budgets in the Gwinnett Daily Post on Sunday, October 20th. And that same notice announced the dates of the 2 public hearings. To the mayor's point, last Monday on November 4th was the first hearing. Tonight is the second and final hearing. The budgets have been available for public inspection in the clerk's office and on the city's website since October 21st. The general operating fund budget is $559,235 less than the approved FY24 operating budget. And the 2025 capital improvement budget shows an increase of around $3.254 million compared to the approved 2024 capital improvement budget. This includes a transfer of $400,000 from the general fund to the capital improvement budget. As staff, as we build the budget, both the operating and capital improvement budgets, we're very conservative with our revenue forecast while maintaining our expected high quality and high level of service delivery. The budget also shows emphasis on continued investment in infrastructure and city assets, such as our various parks, the Sugar Hill Greenway. Downtown assets are growing and affordable Sugar Hill gas system, transportation, and walkability. And as city manager, our teams works very, very hard every day to maintain and enhance the city's unrestricted reserves for unforeseen emergencies or opportunities. As I mentioned last week, the FY 2025 budget includes a 4% compensation adjustment, both cost of living as well as merit increases. That's inclusive of that 4% for all full-time employees as well as regular part-time employees. It also includes an anticipated 10% increase in the cost of our group insurance coverage for our employees and families. Unlike private sector accounting, governmental accounting is accomplished by fund and is budgeted and adopted at the department level. In the operating budget, there are 16 different departments. Under the category of other funds, there are 8 different funds. The capital improvement budget being one of them. Our 3 enterprise funds, our gas fund, our golf fund, and stormwater. Our municipal court, which could be a separate fund or it could be part of the administration budget. Downtown Development Authority, our East Center and Solis mixed-use developments, as well as the Riverlands Authority. So just let me go over some of the changes. At the last public hearing and last meeting, several council members expressed some questions about budgeting and wanted to reduce certain things in education and training and travel and other items. So we spent the last week working on that and working on those suggested changes. And we also was a suggestion that we add a position for deal with code enforcement and neighborhood improvement. So in this particular budget that's before you tonight, which is different than last week, there's now 1 new position in the general fund dedicated to code enforcement and neighborhood improvement. The budget also includes 1 new position in the golf course, clubhouse, bar, and grill operations. As I said at the offset, at the start of this presentation, the 2025 general fund operation budget is $17,919,548, but again, $599,000 less than our FY 2024 budget. So we've made reductions across various line items in the budget: travel, education, and training. We removed the transfer from the general fund to golf by removing a course improvement project, reduced the gas appliance rebate line item from $200,000 to $100,000. We changed the gas transfer of $312,517 that was going to gas reserves to a transfer from gas reserves to the CIP to help fund the Transco project. The overall transfer now from the gas reserves is $575,517. That will be reflected in Mr. Besesh's presentation of the capital improvement program. We also increased our annual paving amount from $750,000 to $1 million. And once again, Troy will address all of these changes in his presentation. Overall, the reductions made in the general fund since hearing number 1 and the addition of a new position in planning and development for code enforcement, the general fund budget remains the same as presented last week in total dollars. So there's no net change. We're able to manage within the general fund to find the resources to do that. So in summary, overall, the combined 2025 general fund, capital improvement budget, and other funds reflects a 5.54% increase compared to FY 2024, due primarily to the substantial increase in investments in capital projects. I don't view them as expenditures, I view them as investments. Your city remains in a sound financial position with strong and responsible unrestricted reserves. We will likely conservatively end FY 2024 with approximately $9 million in unrestricted reserves. This reflects about a 50%, a little over a 50% coverage ratio of the FY 25 general fund. And this rainy day fund provides an operational cushion and enables the city to respond to emergencies and opportunities. Before closing, I want to extend my thanks to our frontline staff, our managers, our directors, and our management team for helping build, define, and redefine the budget that is before you. We've worked since August to get this in the position it is in tonight. We are fortunate to have a talented and skilled team that take their fiduciary responsibilities seriously. So on behalf of our entire staff and management team, I proudly submit the FY 25 operating, capital improvement budget, enterprise, and other fund budget for your consideration. Thank you.
Would Mr. Basesh like to give his part of the presentation?
I probably need to do that since I... Troy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Radford and Mr. Mayor and council members. While I am displaying the updated capital improvement budget, I do want to express my appreciation for others that have had a chance to look through the presentation I made last week, notably Cindy and Paul, who helped refine the information that was presented and give me a chance to provide some better information, hopefully a little bit more clarity on the document. This is a document that I built from scratch. I'm very familiar with it. I know where things are. Many people who look at it don't see it as I see it, so I appreciate another set of eyes. In terms of orientation on this version as compared to last week's presentation, before I get into some of the project-related changes, I do want to highlight on the left side of the table, there are some new red dots, as may not be very clear on the screen, but I've tried to number projects that were modified from last week with the round dot, which is not clear, but there is a number with it, number 1. And so those are changes that I want to get into in a moment. The diamond was on there last week, and it also reflects some changes from the 2024 program for capital improvements in terms of scope, budget, and other changes to those projects. And then I also included the designation for a few new projects that were added to the list from 2024. So with that, let me provide a little bit of background orientation and numbers from the presentation last week. This is a 5-year capital improvement program, and it lays out the implementation of 26 projects over a 60-month period, and that takes it from design phase or pre-construction to construction delivery and completion. It totals just over $52 million of investment in infrastructure, assets, and facilities for our community. Previous versions of this were around 50 to 51 million and included a number of projects like the E-Center, like Ridge Lake Park, like many of the parks that we enjoy today. And it also includes some transportation projects that we completed recently, like Alton Tucker Boulevard, like road constructions at the intersection of Whitehead Road and Ramey that was SPLOST funded, among many other. So I want to orient you to a few of the legends at the bottom of this table. On the left, you'll see there are some project categories that are identified. This helps us track kind of how we're spending the funds in terms of gas utilities, transportation, recreation. If there's an economic development interest in a project, we identify that. If there's a cultural resources component to a project, we also identify that type of project, as well as stormwater. It's a 5-year program. It's funded from various sources, most of which are not property taxes, but user fees and sales taxes. And those are identified in the legend at the bottom right of this table, which just spells out my abbreviations for some of those in the source column on the left nearest non-general funds, and then also GF just recognizes that there is a general fund transfer to accomplish some of these projects. But as you'll see, we are able to leverage the general fund to accomplish an order of magnitude of some 100 times the result in the return on that investment. In terms of 2025, we did clean up this document a little bit. I've got information from Transco on the first major project of 2025, which is the utility tap and regulator station upgrade. We also are beginning the Highway 20 pedestrian and greenway bridge project in November and December, so the balance of that will be funded through the 2025 program. We have some sidewalk projects. We have Ridge Lake Park improvements that will take the form of playground equipment and additional trail construction in the park. We have LMIG. One of the big changes from last week was to boost the annual funding of that program up to $1 million a year. We did have that identified in 27, 28, and 29 at $1 million, but we went and took some money from the West Broad Streetscape program to fund the first 2 years of that at $1 million. So you'll see that reflected here in this document. The other projects that I did want to mention, and I failed to mention this on the last slide, so I'm just going to backtrack just for a moment to mention one other change with the format of this cover sheet and table. On the right-hand side, when you look at 2025 through 2029 under the year column, we have some of the check boxes that represent when we'll be working on different components of a project. With the exception of the road resurfacing program, which is an annual program, many of the others are over a 2 or a 3 year period. That gives us time to enter the design and pre-construction phase of a project and then program the actual construction for the later phases. And so without having a table that's about 14 screens wide, we just check the box and identify the total 5 years of funding for a project. In this case, we did identify the work in the design and pre-construction phase with a red checkbox. So there were a couple of comments last Monday about a few of the new projects. So we want to still keep those in, but at a design level, so we can talk about site selection, we can talk about what the scope involves, and then move those forward or take them out as necessary. So I did want to mention that. That was a change from last week. And with that, this slide is in the capital improvement budget as presented and identifies, again, plan sources and project categories. One of the big items is the Transco regulator station and tap that we have gotten the final numbers from Transco on that project. It is a $2 million project. As Ms. Avery mentioned last week, there was still some work that Transco needed to research and provide before we could get a final number. What I am showing for that particular line item is just the balance that we'll be funding in 2025. We do have some reserves that we would like to allocate towards this project to make up the difference. I'll present this particular item at next month's meeting, and so we'll be ready to make a decision in December on that. As I mentioned last week, this gives us capacity to provide for our current growth plans and our current growth needs for the foreseeable future. The Highway 20 bridge has been awarded and is under contract. We have a pre-construction meeting set up for next week, and so we are gearing up to start that project. So there will be some components of this will be funded out of the 2024 budget, and then the balance in 2025. The PIB Sidewalks project is about 1,600 linear feet of enhanced sidewalk on the east side of Peachtree Industrial. This connects a short gap up to Spring Hill and the school at Spring Hill Road. We did get a comment, thank you, Mr. Perkle, for a recommendation to seek out some additional funding from Gwinnett County, so we plan to do that. I'm not sure the sidewalk program is the right place to do it, but they do have trails money, and I think it is available, so we'll pursue that. I don't reflect that in the capital improvement plan just yet, but if we get it, we'll displace the funds accordingly and use them for another project. The plans are nearly complete and have gone through the plan review process at Gwinnett County, so we'll be reaching out to them with the funding request. I mentioned Ridge Lake Park Phase 2B is what I'm calling it. We'll add some highway lighting along the frontage. We'll add the playground and then some additional trail construction. And that will be in the interim until we fund the future portion of the project, which it does involve pavilions, a fishing pier, and some other improvements by the pond. Some other sidewalk projects. This one is currently in right-of-way acquisition, but we do envision this one getting off the ground in '25 as well. One of the big projects that we discussed last week was our roadway repairs and resurfacing program. We are proposing that we submit for the grant program through Georgia DOT some 4 miles of roadway. This is on 22 different streets. That will depend on the bid prices and how they come in. We currently have about 80 miles of streets in the city that the city is responsible for maintaining. Last year, we funded the improvements to 4.5 miles of streets at about $1 million. And then we have not recognized that there was some additional rounds of funding from Georgia DOT. We hope that happens again, but we have not planned for that. We updated the pavement condition assessment at the last meeting, so I won't go into much detail other than we are targeting for the milling and resurfacing some of the worst streets in the city. The roads that we're talking about making repairs to are in Riverside Walk, Richland Creek, Hillcrest Glen, Bent Creek, the Springs. Some of those are the neighborhoods we've got on the list for the next round of pavement repairs. One of the future projects is the Hillcrest Greenway, which we looked at a feasibility approach to this where we were looking at an on-street version and then a wooded off-system alignment, which takes it back behind the large warehouse on Peachtree Industrial and behind the neighborhoods to South Richland Creek Road, and then we'll eventually loop around to other portions of the Greenway on the west side of town. We already have 1 mile of that Greenway constructed by the 2 projects north of Highway 20, and so we're looking to extend that all the way up to Richland Creek and South Richland Creek Road. This was funded, at least a portion of it, by the developer of the Primrose Estates subdivision, and they are funding about $500,000 of the construction of this trail. We talked about the downtown streetscape program. We've done some initial public involvement. We'll do some additional public involvement on this before we actually go to construction plans. So look for that to continue a discussion and dialogue in 2025. We also identify some new projects around Champion Tree, and this would be to recognize or celebrate the 150-year-old Southern Red Oak. It's the centerpiece of a proposed downtown park. It focuses on tree preservation, protection methods, but does include funding for a small restroom building, benches, grassing, irrigation, and enhanced on-street parking. One of the new projects that we are looking at as well is adding some pickleball courts, outdoor pickleball courts to our Parks and Recreation program. And so this is one location we've looked at on Oak Street. It is part of a property donation from Ackerman and Novair. And this is actually just the design and pre-construction phase of this project in 2025. We are also looking at a inclusive playground, playground. I'm sure you can pray on the playground, but it's a playground. And an inclusive playground is a universally designed, sensory-rich environment that enables all children to develop physically, socially, and emotionally. It's an engaging place that provides just the right level of challenge and offers opportunities to succeed. It's a well-designed place that addresses all levels of ability, a place that goes beyond minimum accessibility standards, and it creates experiences that meets a variety of needs and interests. So this is something we're looking at. We've assembled a task force. I believe members of council are familiar with that. And we're looking for design and site selection and some other focal points on this for 2025. Another project proposed for 2025 is cemetery improvements, and this is largely focused on the backside of the cemetery. It also just continues the decorative style fencing of aluminum pickets with columns, but we also recognize that just due to inflationary forces, we may look to vinyl coated chain link in some of the wooded areas to save some costs there. We also hope to look at gates and signage at the front if funds allow. So we'll be making some scope refinements on that when we get ready to bid that project. It's where it's located, and then the right doesn't really do it justice, but there is the potential for some additional signage over the entry gates from Church Street. So for 2025, there are a number of funding sources for the projects we are recommending. Most of those are SPLOST and other sources. There is a small component, the $400,000, that does come from the general fund that represents 3% of the overall needed funds to construct the $12 million worth of improvements for 2025. The total 5-year capital improvement program has some of the same funding sources. We have looked to SPLOST to fund a large component of our infrastructure investment. And again, most of these, if not the lion's share, are not property taxes, but user fees and sales taxes. So it helps us by leaning on some of our guests in downtown Sugar Hill and other places that spend money here to help fund our infrastructure. So with that, that's the capital improvement budget. I'll take some questions, or I would like to briefly go through a few of the enterprise funds, if I may, briefly. I don't have.
Let's do that, and then I'll ask if there are any questions.
Okay.
When you get done.
Okay.
Before we open up the public hearing.
Okay. As Mr. Radford mentioned, there were a few changes from last week related to the gas fund, and two of those were reducing the gas appliance rebate and the transfer to CIP for the Transco project. One item I did want to mention related to the gas rebate program, I know we've talked about this a couple times over the last 18 months or so, but with the rebates that we do provide, the ROI on those is somewhere around a little over 1 to 3 over the first 3 years of the program. So it just depends on the appliance that someone is requesting the rebate. And so we're talking about a payback period of anywhere from 12 to 30 months on those. We did reduce it based on some input from 2 other cities. One is Thompson and the other is Lawrenceville. Lawrenceville, if you'll recall, you may not recall, Lawrenceville is an electric city, so they provide electricity and gas. So they don't really have to provide rebates, but they do provide a rebate program on the order of $40,000 to $50,000 a year. They have 50,000 meters. It's one of the largest systems in Georgia. And then we also looked at Thompson, which is a little bit smaller than us. So Thompson has a little less than 4,000 meters, but they fund their rebate program at $100,000. So far, we've received 6, 8, 10 rebate applications, so we're still making our way through that process, and we do expect that to pick up in coming years. But we are recommending we continue that program. In the golf fund, I think we've talked a little bit about this already, but we're talking about reducing the transfer from the general fund, and then we have left most everything the same. And unless there are some questions, I don't want to read through my notes or my comments, but we've talked a little bit about the changes based on last week's meeting. So with that, I will conclude my comments and turn it back over to Mr. Radford.
Troy, if you go back, one question about the capital improvement budget dealing with the Oak Street inclusive project, inclusive playground project. You may not be able to read it's very small print, but the estimated cost of the project is $650. Our only contribution would be the $50,000 for design. The other $600 would be expected to come from fundraising and other partners. So not any city assets for that.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Radford. All right, any questions or comments from City Council before I open up the public hearing? Yes, Ms. Avery. Yep.
I just have a few comments to make. I had made some suggestions last week and gone through some of the changes, which I would like to go over a few again tonight, if that's all right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, thank you for your patience. Okay, so I will briefly go over some of the points that I had made last week, and I acknowledge also that there have been some changes thanks to the hard work of city staff. And I had a top 10 list, starting with the Oak Street Park. And as Mr. Radford mentioned, these are the 2 acres behind the upcoming commercial center at Stanley and 20. And I understand the rationale of starting planning this year. With so much in the capital improvement budget, Oak Street Park has been suggested as a pickleball court and ADA playground. We have 6 pickleball courts already at Robinson Park, which I know is owned by the county. That's a short distance away. And we do have some indoor pickleball courts at the E-Center. Last I heard, the city was proposing 8 to 10 pickleball courts at the Oak Street Park. And I had also talked to a rec director at Gwinnett County, and they're looking at building 6 to 8, possibly from $600,000 to $800,000. So I'm not really sure how accurate or how good the figure is for 8 to 10 at Oak Street Park. Another thing that had been pointed out to me with pickleball courts, you have to think about how many teams are going to be there. The parking has to correspond with that. But if the ADA playground is at the same park, it has been pointed out to me pickleball can be noisy. It's a very popular sport. There's a lot of coming and going activity with that. And although I'm in agreement with an ADA playground, the better place for that might be at Ridge Lake Park, since we're already going to expand the parking there and have a playground there. With an ADA playground, I would think that you would need more handicap parking there. So as far as Oak Street Park, I would just like to see some changes there and some careful consideration as well as public input, which we have not had yet for Oak Street Park. It was just a couple of months ago that Novar presented their design review board and presented us with the 2 acres. So I think there needs to be more community input, some surveys on that, and some more discussion on Oak Street Park. As far as Champion Park goes, I understand that that's a big deal with our champion tree there. And again, I think that we need to move that to 2026 so that we can have more discussion and more community input about that. Item 3, the downtown streetscape and roundabout. As we heard tonight in citizens' comments, that roundabout is causing some issues, not just with mailboxes, but and the speed, but sometimes the school bus and larger trucks have an issue getting around the roundabout. And right now in the budget we have for that is $368,782. And I've been informed, or it's been projected, that we would probably contract out for that. And I'd like to see what the difference is if we could do that in-house. The gas appliance rebate program has been moved to $100,000. And I've just learned tonight that we do have some rebate applications. I'm still not in favor of the gas appliance rebate program, nor the marketing program that we have with MGAG, since we do have a marketing and department in Sugar Hill and the gas department. And I think with them working together, it might not be necessary to have the gas appliance rebate program. Travel has been trimmed, as you can see. The 2025 budget, and I'll go over the bold items. Originally, travel was proposed for $10,000, and I had proposed $6,000 for the mayor and council. That has now been changed to $8,000. The administration had been proposed at $25,000. I had proposed $18,000, and that has been changed to $20,000. The facilities was proposed at $2,000, and that has been changed to $1,000. And the marketing and communications was proposed at $3,200 and now has been changed to $2,500. The streets has been changed from $2,000 to $1,000. Cemetery stays the same at $500. Recreation changes from $2,400 to $2,000. The total travel budget for all these departments, according to the new plan presented, given today, is $66,200, which is less than the original proposed of $77,300, but still quite an increase over the 2023 of $38,961. Another thing that was mentioned was education and training that I had brought up last week. That also has changed in several departments. The mayor and council original proposal was 12. I had proposed 6, and that has now been changed to 10. The administration was originally 20,000. I had proposed 10, and that has now been changed to 17,500. The facilities has been changed from 15 to 1,000, and marketing and communications from 3,000 to 15, and the streets from 3,000 to 1,000. The Eagle Theater from 900 to 750, and the Bowen Plaza events from 3,000 to 1,000. And the stormwater remains the same, as does the remaining 2 items, bringing down the new education and training from 75,400 to 64,750, which is still a big change over 2023. And I will certainly say I do understand the value and need for education and training. Our employees do need to be updated with new state regulations, with the latest trends in technology. There's a great deal that goes into education and training. It's been cut a little bit, So I'm pleased to see that. Next year, perhaps we can look at again more carefully. There are some places where very, very little was spent on education and training, and that could have been cut a little bit more, but we're doing better. Consultants, I did not propose any changes for consultants. We do spend quite a bit of money. 2025 proposal is $477,000 for consultants. And I understand that we use consultants for feasibility analysis, topography analysis, looking at site plans, looking at geographical studies. But as a council, I would like us to have more background information. We get these line items for high dollar items, and we're not really sure exactly what we are getting consultants for, and it would be nice to have a monthly report on the consultants, since with that is a high dollar item. Going back to the top 10 on overtime public safety, I was pleased to see that the 2025 original was $17,600, and that has been changed to $5,000 for overtime. But again, at 17 for this year and would have been 17.6 for next year, that is still the highest department for overtime. Also, this makes the total expenditures of the public safety department $1,147,100 instead of $1,150,700. I believe that when we have city events, when we have special holiday events, there's a lot that goes on downtown. We have a lot of meetings. With flex time and better scheduling and planning, that overtime can still be cut down, especially considering not only do we have our marshals, but we also have the reserve marshals available. And I'd like to see more of a flex schedule and advanced planning to further cut down the overtime. The city merchandise and promo items was originally $28,500, and in the new figure that has been cut down to $25,500. These two amounts are from the marketing and communications department and the economic development departments. So let's see how that goes for 25 and decide if we need to trim that a little bit more. And as Mr. Radford mentioned tonight, we had originally scheduled $312,278 to go from gas to the unrestricted reserves, and now that has changed to capital improvement for the Transco program. And I was pleased to see that the Transco program overall figure has been reduced to $1,575,517, which is a little bit less than the original total. Do I have that right? Yes, okay. Right, you did mention that. Okay, so that's what I'm saying about capital improvement. We have two huge projects happening in capital improvement. We have Transco and the pedestrian bridge. There is a possibility they could run over, which is why I think maybe moving a couple of things over to the 26 might work out well. In conclusion, I know a budget is a lot of juggling. It's talking to department heads. As it was mentioned tonight, a new code enforcement officer has been suggested. I don't know if the Planning and Development Department asked for a code enforcement officer. I know the council member did. I know that there are other departments that feel like they could use another person. I'm not exactly sure that we need 3 code enforcement officers, because that involves not only a salary, but also the benefits that go along with that, plus a vehicle. So that jumps up the Planning and Development Department quite a bit. So I think as a council, we need to talk about that. I don't know if a full or part-time employee was on any department's head wish list. So I would like to bring that up as well. I know that a lot goes into this budget, and I do appreciate that. It's a lot of juggling, it's putting the pieces together, and it has to be well-balanced. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, and hope to hear many comments about the budget and questions during our public hearing. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Avery. Any other questions or comments before we open up the public hearing? Yes, Mr. Page.
Since Councilwoman Avery brought up the code enforcement, I was the one who did suggest that, and I'm pleased to see that budgeted in. I think it is important, especially as we're looking at potentially cross-training some of our team, doing other items in planning and zoning, and really just looking at a holistic picture of code enforcement in general for the city of Sugar Hill. That's been a topic I've talked about up here. It's been mentioned several times, and I think a full-time employee could definitely benefit our planning and zoning, and potentially it's not a revenue driver whatsoever. We want to make sure that our residents are taken care of, and whatever grace we can extend to them, I think we definitely should. But I know that we are a city that is growing, almost 30,000 residents coming up. So there's lots of properties that can use a little bit more attention and just figuring out how we can be more efficient. Because that code enforcement process has to be efficient in order for it to work, or we're just continuing to burn resources. So just my 2 cents there, but happy that it was programmed in, so really appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Page. All right, we'll open up public comment. I do want to just say one thing. I've noticed that Andrew Schultz is not here tonight, and he misses meetings, but this is like 2 meetings in a row that he has missed. If someone has the ability to reach out to him, just check on him, because that's unusual, and I just noticed it. So all right, so we're going to start the public hearing, and if you have a need to come up and make a public comment about the proposed budget, you're welcome to do so. Mr. January, yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. James January, Rick January, both of those, 1282 Frontier Drive. In fact, I tell people that Rick is for my friends, James is for the officials, so the authorities. I had several comments on it. I decided for whatever reason, I guess, maybe when you're retired you sometimes have too much time on your hands, but I took a pretty deep dive into the budget because it's interesting stuff, obviously, and it's extremely complicated. And of course, that's one of the points I think I'd like to make. I don't know how you guys deal with this, because obviously there are a lot of things in that budget, a lot of line items are just kind of black boxes, if you will. It would be nice, if there could be footnotes or some background documentation or something that would help you guys, as well as maybe the public, understand, what's behind those numbers. And Ms. Avery mentioned, of course, consulting fees. That was one that kind of jumped out at me. In fact, it's $400,000. Well, obviously, consultants don't come cheap. We know that. And, when you're running a city with all this going on, there's a lot of consultants, I'm sure, used. So it would be kind of nice, maybe even perhaps in Mr. Radford's monthly reports, even to, bring out some of those things just to kind of help the citizens see, hey, look, this is where some of your money's going. That might be helpful as well. One thing I question is the franchise fees that we have for things like Georgia Power, the cable companies and things like that. Is there a need to, if you will, charge a fee to these organizations or these utility companies? Yeah, because it came to about $1 million, I think, a little over $1 million total. And the one thing that strikes me is that if we're providing something to them, or there is some need for them to pay some sort of fee, that makes sense. But otherwise, it just seems to me that in essence, a fee is really a tax. And we all know corporations don't pay taxes. So at the end of the day, what happens is that $1 million in franchise fees ultimately comes back to us, the ratepayers, the taxpayers. So, if there's really not a need for those kind of things, I question, should that even really be there? Would the citizens be better off if that weren't there? A couple other things. I noticed the Eagle Theater and the Bowl. It seemed like there was a real disparity between the revenues coming in from those. I hear a lot of things about the excitement and the use of the Eagle Theater. I'll be honest with you, I've not had an opportunity or taken the opportunity to utilize either one of those. But I noticed in the budget, for instance, the Eagle Theater, that the amount of revenue coming in was somewhere around just under $300,000, and the expenditures in the budget is something close to $800,000, if I remember right. That's a big disparity. So is there something that I'm missing in the budget, or are we really operating that facility at that big a loss? That's something that, I wondered if it needs further look. The other thing too, these transfers coming in, from the general fund to this fund, from one fund to another, it would be nice perhaps again if those were footnoted so that we kind of had an idea why those were happening and what, where they're coming from, why they're there, where they're going. Let's see, I think I talked about that. The Economic Development Department and the Marketing and Communications Department, wouldn't it make sense to just combine those two? Because are they, I know they're doing some different things, but really aren't they both involved in the same general thing of promoting the city, developing the city economically? Would there be a cost savings of maybe combining those two departments? They're not huge departments, but would there be some benefit in combining those two? On the capital improvement projects, a lot of stuff happening there. The one thing on that, I guess, I was kind of questioning the oak tree. That seemed to, park that seemed to come up out of nowhere again, as Ms. Avery mentioned. But the other tree I do want to mention, too, of course, is the Champion Tree Park. That seems to be new. I want to just comment that it had the occasion when we came for the Fall Festival, Sugar Hill Festival, we parked in that property. That is a gorgeous piece of property, just the way it is. So I think, Mr. Besace, you said there really got to be just some minimal changes, and I think that's awesome because that is a really pretty piece of property, just as it is. Again, I think it would be, as I mentioned, it'd be nice to have Mr. Radford on occasion bring up some of these key expenditures, maybe key revenue things where we're doing better, where we're maybe a little over budget or something one way or another in his monthly reports. That would be a nice thing to have. I think that's pretty much what I've run into. Again, obviously a lot going on in this budget and a lot of tough decisions for y'all to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. January. Anybody else wish to speak on the budget tonight? All right, I see nobody, so we'll close out the public hearing, public comment. Any further questions from City Council before I ask for a motion?
I'll just make a couple of comments. I appreciate Councilmember Avery's comments about that, and I think the money that we see in there for 26, where you had talked about moving those two projects to 26, I think that's where the bulk of that goes. When you're talking about public input, we're only showing $50,000 in both those parks for next year, which would allow for some public input and design for both those parks. Neither one of those parks would be constructed until 26. So I think what's showing in the budget for those $50,000 for both those parks is exactly what it is that I think you're asking for. With regard to those two particular parks, the Champion Tree Park is obviously is going to be a beautiful park in downtown. I'm glad that that's something that Troy has added to the CIP. Other than that, I really appreciate, again, Paul, Cindy, and all the department heads and staff that contributed to the budget. It is a complex budget, but they've done a fantastic job. And I think they did an incredible job considering the changes that they made between last week and this week, including, I know that Cindy and Paul both worked yesterday on a city holiday to finish up the changes to the budget. So I want to say I appreciate you guys taking that time. That's personal time that you could be doing your personal things, but you decided to give that back to the city as you all always do. So, but that's all I've got, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to state that I know that a lot of time and effort has gone into this, and as Mr. January pointed out, also, some of this we don't know a lot of background about. There's a lot of line items, and there's just a lot that goes into it, footnotes, line items. And as a council, we are voting to spend taxpayer money and do that to the best of our ability. And if we were to vote on the budget tonight, that would be the first time that the budget has been approved in November. Typically, the council has voted on the upcoming budget in December. As Mr. Radford mentioned tonight, the budget was available October 21st, and several of us, council and staff and maybe some citizens, have been looking carefully at it since October 21st. So, and then our first public hearing was November 4th. So here we are at November 12th, and that's less than 30 days. And I don't know if there's a certain rush to get this done in November this year instead of December, but I would like to point out that I think some more background information on several of the items that we are voting on for the interest of the city and our citizens might need to be not such a rush, and decide, especially if we're looking at, are we going to hire more people or not? Do other departments, had they asked for more employees or not? But I just wanted to point out that perhaps we need more than less. We've had less than 30 days to scrutinize everything, and that might be something to think about as we're deciding whether or not to vote for the budget tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Avery. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion to adopt the proposed 2025 proposed operating budget and proposed fiscal year 25 through 29 capital budget as presented this evening.
Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion from Mr. Anderson, a second from Mr. Hicks. Any further discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. We actually have no budget now then, because y'all have defeated the budget.
So, right, we do have till the end of the year pass it. I think certainly some changes were made. We just got them last night, really. I think it moved in the right direction, but not enough for me there. So we've got another month to discuss it and see where we can go with it. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 3, which is public hearing for Bailey Avenue, and I'll recognize the Planning Department.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, and Claire will finish up these. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weatherly.
Good evening. We received an application for Design Review Board approval in the Central Business District at 5000 Bailey Avenue for a commercial space. This is part of a larger residential project that went through a rezoning in 2021. Per that rezoning, there is required to be a 4,500 square foot commercial space built at 50% of COs issued for the residential units. And the overall site plan for the property was approved in a design review in 2021 as well. So it's here at the corner of Bailey Avenue and Cumming Highway, currently zoned general business. This is the kind of the zoomed in site plan for the commercial area. It has 3 tenant spaces for retail, restaurant, or the like. It also features a patio area that a restaurant could potentially use for outdoor seating, as well as connectivity to Cumming Highway for automobiles, as well as pedestrian connectivity. The applicant did submit a revised facade to better align with our ordinance. So really the main difference is the previous iteration had over the permitted amount of siding. This has a lowered amount of siding to our standards, using it as an accent alongside the brick, alongside metal panel. Here is the dumpster detail in proximity to the restaurant, and then here are additional renderings submitted by the applicant. This is the site plan that was approved per the 2021 design review. Last week, there was also a question regarding the number of parking spaces, and for a 4,500 square foot building, there would be a minimum requirement of 45 spaces, and this site plan includes 45 spaces as well as the most updated plan that we've received for the LDP review process, so they are meeting the minimum standard of parking spaces. Staff is recommending approval for substantial conformance to exhibits 1 through 3 that were shown in the presentation and as well are in your packets.
Thank you, Ms. Weatherly. Any questions?
I have one more. So could you go back to the illustration of the building frontages? Right back one more. Where it shows the illustration pictures.
Oh, yes.
The question is that consistent with what they're planning for the rest of the development? I'm not particularly wild about that white look and the partial knee wall brick on the front as opposed to the other one that was being all brick. I mean, if it's consistent, I guess there's something to be said for that, but just in general, I didn't find that particularly attractive.
It is generally consistent with the townhome units. They have a brick and then a darker facade, but that we have determined will work alongside each other.
And are those consistent with whatever's allowed in the color palette for downtown overlay and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Mr. Page.
You said 45 in total for parking spots, is that correct?
Yes.
But that's encompassing the entire development, not just the parking lot behind it, is that correct?
I know in the site plan it's listed as 45 spaces allotted for the commercial. There's also on-street parking for the residential units that's listed separately.
Okay. Would you mind going back to, I guess, the last slide you did before staff recommendations? It had the entire site plan.
So this shows kind of the lot just to the west of the commercial space, and then there's also on-street parking going down Bailey Avenue.
Hang on, we can't see it yet. Hang on. It's like slowly fading in and out. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. I mean, just from me looking at it, I guess my only concern, I know this is DBR, but the parking is just a concern. I'm not sure if we can work with them to figure out more on-street parking or more parallel parking. I mean, because the small lot, I mean, really looks like it's going to be eaten up by residential use, especially how the plan is. So, but if we're in the requirements, sounds like minimum 45. We've got minimum 45, so it is what it is. But
And I believe that parking is not included for the residential parking for the amenities.
okay, so there's amenity parking as well.
Yes, there's parking alongside I believe it's a.
I just did a
Kind of in
quick.
the
I'm just trying to do a quick count here, and I'm just not coming up with it, including the parking lot. I see the 40. So if there's more in there, that's great for the amenities. So okay.
All right, anybody else before I open up the public hearing?
Just to follow up on that. So on that point about the 45 being reserved for the commercial, and the other part, I certainly would want to make sure if we're doing it in separate phases that they have their minimum parking too, because as council member said, yes, it doesn't seem apparent that there's 45 that will be dedicated for that usage. For the residential, it looks like there's only one space per unit, is that correct? And then potentially garage parking or whatever, but are those spaces that we see, are they wide enough for two, or are those only one car per unit?
I believe it's a 2-car garage and a 2-car driveway, but the applicant
Okay.
may be able to speak more accurately to that.
Okay, and so when we get into that, if we could ask them, that would be good too. If it's two per residential unit, then I have less concern that there would be spillover that you indicated than if it were the one. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, we will now open up the public hearing. We'll do like we always do when we have a public hearing. We'll do 10 minutes for those that might be in support, and then 10 minutes for those that might have concerns with or be in opposition to. And so I will start with the 10 minutes for those in support. Is the applicant or anybody here would like to come up and speak? Thank you. Please give your name and address for the record.
Hi, Andrew Butcher, 3060 Peachtree Road. I represent the applicant. To answer your question, on parking, we will have single stall garages and 2-car garages, both with driveway space for additional cars. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
All right, while we've got the applicant up, is there any other questions? All right.
And then I did want to touch to your comment on the colors and the rendering. They did appear a little bit white. I think that's just because the rendering, it's a metal panel, so it will be more of a silver gray as opposed to the white. But we are willing to do the mock-up in the field as a proposed condition.
All right, thank you. Is that it?
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else wish to speak in this category of time? All right, if not, we'll close this and we'll move on to those that might have concern with or opposed to it. Anybody like to take advantage of this time? All right, I see nobody, so we'll close out that period of time. And I'll ask if there's any further questions or comments from City Council before I ask if there's a motion. All right, is there a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve CBD Design Review 24003 with the enumerated number 1 condition.
All right, I have a motion to approve from Mr. Anderson. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Page. Any further discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, next we'll move on to item number 4, which is another public hearing for 5305 Nelson Brogdon Boulevard. Welcome up, sir.
Good evening, y'all. Skipped through all those. All right. This is Design Review TCO 24-005 at 5305 Nelson Brogdon Boulevard, also known as the Sugar Hill Animal Hospital. You can see located there at the intersection of Old Cumming Road and 20. Currently zoned LM within Town Center overlay. The applicant is proposing a shed, 10 by 16 barn style shed for storage purposes. Is any of this showing on the screen? Okay. Well, anyways, so 10 by 16 barn style shed. It's red with black trim. No. Maybe? All right. Would y'all like me to continue without this, or? All right. Yeah, so I did speak with the applicant earlier today regarding just kind of how far back the shed's going to be. It was originally 12 feet on the plan. We talked it over a little bit. We moved it back to 20 feet off the right-of-way, which aligns with setbacks previously identified for other developments on the animal hospital property, so it's consistent. There is a fence there. It doesn't have screening anymore. I think it used to, but I didn't see any over there. And it's sitting right next to a tree, somewhat mature tree sitting there. So, but the applicant can speak to all that further if you have any questions. But staff is just recommending 2 conditions now. One being final design shall substantially resemble the attached exhibits labeled Exhibit 1 through 2. And then the second condition is just the accessory structure shall be set back at least 20 feet from all property lines. And that's all I've got.
All right, thank you. Any questions of staff before we open up the public hearing? Okay, thank you. All right, we will open up the public hearing, and I will start with the first portion of time for those that are in support of the project. Is the applicant here? Would they like to come forward? Thank you, sir. Please give your name and address for the record.
My name is Gary Nicholson. The address is 5305 Nelson Brogdon Boulevard. I'm with Tough Shed Company. I'm a permit technician. We're just proposing dry storage for the animal hospital. We did take into consideration Mr. Perkle's comments last week about the proximity of the property line. Logan spoke to me earlier today. I called the Sugar Hill Animal Hospital, and they've agreed that the 20-foot variance there is perfectly in line for them. And again, it's just dry storage, no utilities, no land disturbance.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of the applicant? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else wish to speak during this portion of time? All right, we will close out that portion of time, and we'll move on to those that might wish to speak in opposition to or express concern about the application. And I see nobody for that time period, so we will close that out as well. Any further comments or questions from, yes, Mr. Perkle?
I made the comment at the work session and asked about screening there and whether the fence was opaque or not, and we didn't know at that time. I did happen to drive by it as well. It's a chain link fence. I'm guessing a 5-foot chain link fence there. It looked higher than maybe the standard 3 or whatever to keep the animals in. I have no problem with storage there. I'd much rather whatever they have be kept inside than scattered about the property, so I have no problem with that. I would like to see some screening around it, particularly since that fence is transparent there. And I'm open to whether that would be just a small privacy fence around it or whether that would be plantings around it, whatever they might choose to do. I don't mind. I would like it to be screened somewhat. I noticed directly across the street, and I don't, it doesn't come to mind the name of that street right there, but between them and the new residential development, we didn't require any rear screening on all of those townhomes that go there. And so as you drive by 20, you can see straight into what is their backyard. They have no privacy for one, and obviously we can see whatever they have out there as well. Unfortunately, since it wasn't done at the time of development, some of those things may be added in the future, but they'd be done on an individual basis and would not be consistent or match or any of those sorts of things. So I'd just like to see us have a little more emphasis on screening from roads for rear and side yards. But that's the only concern I have for this particular property. Other than that, I don't mind the intended use at all.
Mr. Perkle, in regards to that concern, would you like to make that as part of a motion in addition to?
I would like to see that added, yes, when we're ready for a motion.
That'll be great. Are there any other comments? I'll recognize you for a motion, and I know I can't see it on the board, but I think Logan had some additional, some additions regarding the 20-foot versus the 14, so.
Right, so I would make a motion to approve this, I guess it's a design review with the conditions presented by staff, but also with an addition to provide screening around the structure in the form of either landscaping or fencing, privacy fencing.
I've got a motion from Mr. Perkle. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Second from Ms. Avery. Any discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion with the amendments, please raise your right hand. Okay. Next, we'll move on to item number 5, and that is the LMIG application. Mr. Bisesh.
Mr. Mayor, this is an annual funding program from the Georgia Department of Transportation called Local Maintenance Improvement Grant Program. or LMIG is what we refer to it. It is a component of our overall roadway resurfacing program, so we'll have a few more streets than what I'm going to talk about tonight. But this is what we are recommending we submit to Georgia DOT for our 2025 LMIG program. This is based on our internal review of our pavement condition assessment software that we're using. So this was field verified by our public works staff. They are recommending that we propose Shelley Lane from Level Creek Road to Malte. It's 1,941 feet. And we have estimated that cost at $86,547. Hidden Springs Court, Shelley Lane to the cul-de-sac. It's a short one. Shelley Court, another short cul-de-sac street. Those are pretty inexpensive. Riverside Walk Crossing from the cul-de-sac to Riverside Run Lane. It's a longer street of a little over 4,000 feet, so just under a mile. And that one is going to be rather expensive at $176,853 by my estimate. Riverside Run Court, and that'll be from Riverside Walk Crossing to its cul-de-sac, 124 feet. And I've estimated that at $7,000. Riverside Run Lane from Riverside Walk Court to Riverside Walk Crossing, 681 feet, $30,000. River Ridge Court, and this is from River Ridge Lane to the cul-de-sac, 147 feet, and $9,500 or so on that one. Richland Creek Trail from Sycamore to the cul-de-sac, it's 954 feet long, and it is estimated at $42,000. Sycamore Ridge Drive, Sadie Court, those are together about $60,000. And then moving into Allison Drive, Allison Drive from Level Creek Road to Kipling Lake Court. It is about half a mile. $93,000 is the estimate there for milling and repaving. Chandler Court from Allison Drive to the cul-de-sac, again about a half a mile at $123,000. Kipling Lake Court, Kirby Court to its cul-de-sac, 535 feet and $28,000 is the estimate. Ashton Lake Court, Allison Drive to Chandler Court, 1,100 feet, I should say, and $56,870. Kirby Court from Chandler Court to the cul-de-sac, and that's $25,000 based on our estimate for road work and for unit prices from 2024's contract. So with that, the estimated total for repairs to these streets, which include edge milling, crack filling, patching, deep patching, manhole adjustments, valve adjustments, and some sign replacement, is estimated at $750,413. So that would put the request at the above the 70% match required for that program. So that is our recommendation based on staff input and our review of the pavement condition assessment. We do anticipate there are going to be some additional funds released in early 25, so we'll be on the lookout for that, and we'll provide a supplemental request at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Basesh. Any questions of Mr. Basesh? All right, is there a motion?
Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve the grant application for fiscal year 25 local maintenance and improvement.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Perkel. Is there a second? All right, second from Mr. Page. Any discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Great. Next, we'll move on to item number 6. Mr. Perkel.
Mayor, these two items, 6 and 7, somewhat go together. So during the discussion for item number 1, the rezoning on Whitehead Road, we heard discussion of alternate uses for that property that would be allowed by use right. One of those was apartments. and we've got a quite high density standard there for apartments in the downtown area. This is my concern that that is allowed by use right, particularly given the number of apartments that we currently have in the city and I believe still under construction. I don't believe they've completed. My thought here was that if more apartments are added, it should be done by a positive vote of the council as opposed to a use right of the land use owner. So what I proposed here with item number 6 is a moratorium on issuing of permits for apartments for those that are not already under construction until I believe it's listed as February, so that we can hear item number 7 and then send that to planning and zoning, and then that would come back to us, which would be dealing with the actual use right or modifying of the ordinance that would require a special use permit or use right there. So I'd like item number 6 as a moratorium until item number 7 could be considered.
Thank you, Mr. Perkle. Any questions of Mr. Perkle? All right, let's take up number 6 first and see if there's a motion on that one.
Mayor, I would offer a motion to approve this moratorium on apartment houses and dwellings in the CBD and TCO.
Yes, sir. I have a motion from Mr. Perkle for approval of the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second from Mr. Hicks. Any discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All right, next, let's do number 7.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And this is, as I mentioned, the actual resolution to send proposed changes to the Planning Commission for them to hear them and then come back to us to make this change so that it would require a special use permit for apartments in these zoning districts as opposed to being a use right.
I have a motion from Mr. Perkle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Avery. Any discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All right, that's all we have for the day. I don't think we have any need for executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn from Mr. Hicks. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second from Mr. Perkle. All those in favor? All right, we are adjourned until December.